بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبع هداه. Thank you for coming here today, brothers, for our new lesson this week. So we're going to follow on from what we got to last week, which is the last two characteristics from the group of characteristics which doesn't have any opposites. الصفات التي لا ضد لها. So today we're going to talk about الاستطالة and الغنة before we go for the next section, inshallah. So that is coming at page number 91 in the book, inshallah. So the istitala is a characteristic which is unique to only one letter in the Arabic language, and that's حرف الضاد. حرف الضاد has additional characteristic to the other letters, which is called the istitala. So we'll read inshallah and understand what is this istitala and how to focus on it. Istitala is the slight pushing of the tongue forward when pronouncing the dad, from the back to the front of the mouth until the tip of the tongue lightly touches the root area of the upper two incisors, which is the effect of the air pressing behind the tongue. So what you are looking at here is a characteristic which is very similar to blowing air, right? Because of the amount of pressure that you have in the area between the tongue and the top of the mouth. That whole area, if you remember as looking at the photo, that whole area, the tongue is touching. The tongue is touching from the sides. Tongue is actually contacting from and pressuring from the sides, and it's touching but without pressuring from the front side. And that area, because it's not pressured from the front side, it's loose enough for the tongue to move a little bit to the front, and that's what we call it al-istitala, elongation. Because what's happening here is the lengthening that's happening, or elongationing that's happening. It's happening because of that slight movement in the tongue forward to produce more area for the air to be pressured in. Now, it's important to understand that there's another thing that's happening with the dad when you pronounce it, which is the running of the voice, right? And that is because of the looseness of the letter dad. So it's not one of the what do you call it, the حروف الشديدة, the tough letters. What was the translation for شديدة? Sorry. حروف الشديدة. شدة. Strength, yeah. It's not a strong letter, and it's not an in-between letter, but it's a soft letter or a loose letter. So that additional sound, like if you say, for example, أضعف, this additional that is purely, it's a looseness characteristic, but that's also caused slightly because of that movement of the tongue. However, the movement of the tongue is purely what we call al-istitala. That's how you need to produce this additional pressure, especially if you stop on it. Let's say as-samawati wal-ard, like this additional sound that comes with the dad. That's what is called by the istitala. Any question on this one, brothers? We'll come to practice on it, inshallah, in a later stage. Okay. So next one is the ghunna. Now we talked about the ghunna before, if you remember, in the articulation points, and how that the ghunna is part of the is part of the noon and the meme letters. These two letters come with a complete part and a completing part. And we said that the completing part is always the nasal portion of the letter. So that is purely from an articulation point perspective. However, because of the fact that this nasal sound that comes from the nose has different lengths based on different recitation rules, in from that angle, from the angle of the time it takes to pronounce the ghunna, we also talk about it from the characteristic perspective, right? So we said that we have four levels for the ghunna, and then we said the highest level of the ghunna is when you عندما تكون أكمل ما تكون. So أكمل ما تكون is the most perfect غنة, is when you have the noon with shadda or the mim with shadda, right? So in that cases it takes the longer time, and that time is not measured with haraka, right? Because the measure of haraka, which is fatha dhamma kasra, that's the haraka, that's the measure you use for mid. You use for mid. For the ghunna, we don't use the same measuring method because it's like measuring weight with meters, you know. It's a different measuring technique. And in this case, we call it just most perfect, perfect. And then we have the other two types, which is the incomplete, most incomplete ghunna. So these are the cases which we studied before on page 1. We'll study inshallah on page 150, 52 and 53. So I'm not gonna stress too much about these because we're gonna get to them inshallah. They will have their own time. So that's the chapter of the characteristics of the letters. Now if you go to page 92, page 93 in the book, these are very good reference pages on the book. For those of you who got a copy from me on the book, most of you would have got a poster, and the poster would have all of the characteristics for the letters. It's a very good thing to refer to, and yeah, it's I mean, I wouldn't even mind, like, if you wanna in your spare time have a memorization quiz on this one, so you start practicing. Someone tells you the letter and then you try to guess its characteristics, or vice versa. So someone will tell you the characteristics and then you'll try to guess which letters would match that. It's a good thing to remember in the back of your head, all of the characteristics for the letters. Now, one of the things that people also ask about a lot of the time is how much strict we need to be when it comes to the letters, articulation points, and characteristics, because some people are very strict, some people are taking it too easy, right? So I will remind you on that one is in what we discussed in the beginning of the course, and it's very convenient for us just to look at it briefly. Page 21. So if you go to page 21, now we'll talk about it again because now we just finished the characteristics, so it makes more sense to read it. And then we say that in page 21, we say that the ruling of committing to tajweed is, when it comes to the articulation points of the letters, these are mandatory, right? You cannot change the articulation point of the letter, because that will change it to either another letter or something that has no meaning. So that is definitely something that every Muslim should know how to pronounce the letters properly. And the most important part is putting the effort to do that, because some people might not pronounce it in their lives, but at least putting the effort, trying to pronounce it right, that would be the right thing to do. And I think the other part of it is, when it comes to teaching, is being careful not to teach something unless you are very comfortable with, because many people start teaching people without having verified their reading proficiency. Now when it comes to the characteristics, here we have two types of characteristics. We have ones which take the letter outside its meaning, and these are things like when you say, for example, asa and asa, at-talaq and at-talaq. These things, they change the meaning. They change the meaning to a point where it becomes a completely different letter, a completely different different word. Um, so there is no room here for people to make mistake. The other type is characteristics which, if you miss them, the meaning doesn't change. So, for example, if you do tarqiq for Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, right? Some people don't learn how to say Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, don't make it elevated. They just come and say Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Same thing with most of the letters of tafkhim. Or sometimes you're not showing the whispering of the letters kaf or ta, or the tafashi of the sheen. You're not giving it enough time, or giving different times for the letters, the loose letters, the in-between letters, and the strong letters. So all of this is considered as hidden mistake, lahan khafi. And in the lahan khafi, we have two opinions. If someone is doing it as a student of Quran who has knowledge, or if someone is doing it from the common Muslims. And in both cases, if someone is doing it by himself as his ongoing reading, or as part of the reading to an ustad. So we need to understand here that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed in the Quran, talking to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ قُرْآنَهُ. Means when we read the Quran to you, you have to follow the way it's been pronounced and recited. So that's how we know that we have been ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to read the Quran in the proper manner. So, of course, many common Muslims, people, just normal people, read the Quran. Those are different from someone who's educating others, teaching others, and more importantly, giving them ijazah, right, in their recitation. In that forum, in that area, we have to apply these rules. We have to make sure that people don't just go through the system without having their recitation vetted, and making sure that they're not teaching other people the mistaken way, because that is the chain of narration that we have. That's how we know that the people who have the ijazah, who have the isnad all the way to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are the ones who are reading the Quran in the right way. So that was just a reminder after we finished the sifat, the characteristics of the Arabic letters. And moving from here, we will study lots of things. And most of these are rules when it comes to applying these characteristics and articulation points in the Quran. So before I go to page 94, would love to hear from you guys if you have any question. Good. So that will be a full mark, inshallah. Okay. So next chapter is a very practical chapter. This chapter is based on observations that Dr. Emin Swaid has gone through himself, based on the amount of people that read the Quran for him, and he listened to the recitations. He started grouping together common mistakes that happens when you pronounce the Arabic letters. And then we will do this really quickly, inshallah. I aim to finish this whole section today. So inshallah, next lecture, hopefully we start with the next chapter, which is basically the meeting of two letters. So inshallah, we'll go ahead. The first letter is harful alif. The letter alif. This letter alif, the common mistakes of it, the first one is not opening the mouth as required when you pronounce it. So we always know that when it comes to the alif, you have to open your mouth when you say it. Like this. The tongue is in a resting position and the mouth opens for the sound to come up. Some people, when they read, they don't do this. So they say Musa, Musa, Musa. Because of this, the sound is missing something. The sound is missing the articulation, the perfect articulation point of the alif, which is Musa, like this. The alif is clear and loud. The second mistake is mixing its sound with a hint of the sound of ya, so that it becomes a tilted alif. And again, when we're talking about the ulum of the qira'at, in some modes of recitation, that might be allowed. We call this imala. But in the qira'ah of Imam Hafs and Asim, there is only one place where there is imala, and that's not a subject of today's session. So in all of the cases, the alif is a straightforward alif. So you can't say malik, you can't say maliki. It has to be maliki. You see the difference? The difference is with the malik, the tongue is a little bit elevated in the middle area because that's where the articulation point of the ya is. So you're mixing a ya with the alif and you're making imala. We call it tilting, right? The third mistake is mixing its sound with a hint of the sound of waw. And that's purely coming when you have an elevation letter before it. You have a heavy letter. Some people want to make the heavy letter clear by closing their lips, as if the lips has got to do with it. So instead of khalidin, they say khalidin, or fatala. These are wrong pronunciations. It has to be khalidin, fatala. These two things are separated. Your lips and the articulation point of the letter alif. These are not matching. Also, making it heavy where it should be light. And these are in places where it's a bit confusing. So instead of saying النهار, they say النهار, like this. Or they say النار instead of the right pronunciation, which is النار, like this. Or الباطل, that's the right pronunciation. They say الباطل, They change the ba and the alif, both, they make them heavy. And these are purely coming from the accent, the dialects mixing with the Quranic tajweed. The fifth mistake is making it light where it should be heavy. As in khalidin, where it should be khalidin. Same thing with ghaibah. It has to be ghaibah because that's the highest level of tafkhim. We said there's a elevated letter with a fatha on top of it, and after that followed by alif. That would follow to be the highest level of tafkhim. And the last one from the list of Dr. Ayman is mixing its sound with the sound of the ghunnah. And that's common mistake when people sing the Quran, try to make extra melody in it. So instead of saying Ar-Rahman, they say Ar-Rahman. You see when I'm closing my nose, you can see the nasal part is still coming. It has to be fully coming from the mouth. There is nothing from the nose. These are the common mistakes from the alif letter. Any question on this one? Good. We'll do the lengthening waw after that. So the lengthening waw, the first one is not circling the lips. And we said that if you see someone who's not circling his lips while reading the Quran, then you should correct him. So this is instead of saying تعملون, they say تعملون, oh, very light, تعملون, like this. So the characteristic of the waw is gone, The second mistake is the opposite of it, is when you exaggerate in pressing the lips when you're pronouncing it, trying to make it circular. So instead of saying يقولون, they say يقولون, like this. يقولون, ooh, like this. They pressure too hard, trying to make the waw, clear, and they kind of overdo it. Third mistake is mixing its sound with a hint of the sound of the alif. Right? So that is a common mistake when, with especially people who speak maybe Turkish or a little bit of Farsi because of the accent. So instead of saying كانوا, they say كانا, كانا, like this. Another one which is also common in these accents is mixing the sound with a hint of the sound of the ya. So instead of يوقنون, it becomes يوقنون, like this, right? The fifth mistake is mixing its sound with a hint of the sound of the غنة, similar to the alif, and it will be also similar to the ya. Instead of saying الظالمون, it becomes الظالمون, like this. They mix 50-50, right? الظالمون, all from the mouth. حرف الياء, the lengthening ya. First common mistake is mixing the sound with a hint of the sound of the alif. Because the middle of the tongue is not raised as required when pronouncing it. So instead of نستعين, it becomes نستعين, نستعين, like this. The next one is the opposite of it, is by exaggerating and pressing the middle of the tongue when you pronounce it. So instead of المستقيم, they say المستقيم, المستقيم, like this, pressuring on it. Different levels. Some people overdo it, some people underdo it. Number 3 is mixing its sound with a hint of the sound of the غنة, similar to the case of the waw and the ya. So instead of العالمين, العالمين, you see the mixing? Any question on these 3 letters, brother? These are very common ones, especially the غنة, the nasal part of it. Very, very common. It's good. Now we study with the حروف الحلق, the hams. همز هاء عين حاء. We start غين خاء. The hamza, the first mistake is making it heavy. Making it heavy, especially if it's preceding another heavy letter. So the example we have here is أصابعهم. أصابعهم. Some people say أصابعهم. So they say أصابعهم because of the sad after it. The second mistake is making tasheel in it, where there should be no tasheel. So these tasheel there are specific recitation modes, specific ways of doing it, and normally people just do it because they are rushing. So instead of saying يا أيها الذين, يا أيها, you see how I'm making the hamza clear? يا أيها. And instead of that, they're saying يا أيها, like this. The hamza is gone. And number 3 is weakening its sound when stopping. When stopping at it, if you don't make the hamza clear, it disappears. So the word السماء, السماء, like this. They say السماء, السماء, gone. You can't, the last thing you hear is the alif. So the only difference from what I said is the additional tone. I add a little bit of tone on the hamza. السماء, like this. This is hamza. Common mistakes with the ha. The first one is making it heavy. Making it heavy, as if in the word النهار, ha, you know, or Allah. They make the ha of Allah heavy because of the tafkhim which will come before it. Right? It has to be Allah, Allah. The ha has nothing to do with the tafkhim. Same thing with النهار, النهار. The ra is heavy, but the ha and the alif has nothing to do with it. Second mistake is weakening it due to exaggeration in the parting of the vocal cords, local cords. Sorry. So remember, we said the ha has it's coming from that area. So when you say eh, 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 do you see that there's a little bit of dina sirat? That's how you make the articulation point of the ha clear. And instead of they say dina, dina, it's open. The vocal cords are so open that all you're getting is just tons of air coming. Dina has to be tighter than that. إه إه اهدنا الصراط. Third mistake is not clarifying it when it occurs beside another ha or ha. So that's if you say جباههم جباههم. You remember we said the timing of the duration of the letters, the vowel letters, it's the same. So the same time that you take for the first ha, the same time it takes for the second ha, and the same time it takes for the jim and the ba. Ji, ba, hu, hum, like this. So that's why you can't say jibahum like this. Then you half of the letter, the first one is gone. Same thing with wasabbih, sabbihu. سبحه ليلا طويلا وسبحه ليلا سبحه like this. The fourth common mistake is weakening it when stopping at it, right? Or replacing it with an alif or a fatha, right? So if you say مالية that's the ha in the end. Some people don't do that. It becomes مالية. In this case, what's happening is you're adding a fatha instead of the pronouncing the ha. Or if you say فعلوه the ha has to come clear in the end. Otherwise, it becomes فعلوا nothing. Yeah. Good. No raised hands. That's beautiful. Let's go to the عين حرف العين.
السلام عليكم. بس لو سؤال بعد إذنك لو سمحت.
نعم.
بالنسبة لو قرأنا بحسب سرعات القراءة اللي أخذناها ببداية التحقيق والتدوير والحذف،
نعم.
هل تختلف عند مثلا لفظ جباهي هم حتكون أسرع حتكون أبطأ، يعني هل هناك اختلاف؟
نعم. So the
بسيط.
good question. I'll translate and I'll answer both Arabic and English. So the question is, when it comes to the speed of recitation, does it impact the timing of the letters that you take for these ones? And the answer is definitely yes, 100% yes. الجواب صحيح نعم 100%، لأنه كل سرعة قراءة راح يبين فيها الصوت. And that's why it's not many people are capable of reading with the تحقيق. With recordings. There are few qurra who have done full recordings for the Quran with tahqiq, because it's very difficult. You have to make all of these characteristics very clear and very vibrant. لهذا يعني مش كل القراء يقرؤون بالتحقيق، لأنه صعب، لازم تميز كل هذه الصفات يعني. جزاك الله خير. Okay, common mistakes with the ain. The first one, which is one which is taking too much of my time with lots of students, is changing it to a heavy alif. So instead of saying na'bud, they say na'bud, like this. The second one is cutting off the sound when pronouncing it with a sukoon. So instead of saying يعملون, you see my sound is continuous. I didn't stop because it's in between letter. So you have to continue the sound a little bit and make the in-betweenness characteristic clear. Like this. يعبدون. Some people say يعبدون. they cut it. يعبدون, they don't make the sound continuous. The third mistake is making it heavy. And Ain is a lowered letter. It's not heavy letter. That's mainly if it's getting mixed up with another heavy letter, which is the Sad in this example, which is the word عصوا. عصوا. They say عصوا. عصوا. So they make the Ain heavy to mix it with the Sad, and that's not allowed. You can't say عصوا. It has to be عصوا. عصوا. Ain is light, Sad is heavy. The fourth mistake is pronouncing it similar to a hamza. And in this example that's put, it's a major mistake, because the word يعلم, if you change it to يعلم, it changed the meaning. يعلم means knows, يعلم means feels pain. So when you're saying Wallahu يعلم, Allah knows, it changed the meaning to Allah feel pains. Astaghfirullah. So that's why this one is one of the perfect examples of how this is a major mistake in the recitation. You can't say يعلم, عليم, يعملون, يعلمون. All of that is not allowed. The ain has to be clear. Next one is the other three letters of Brother Ari, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes, brother.
Regarding Ain. What is the difference between the mistake point number 1 and 4? And Alif and Hamza. My knowledge.
That one is Nabud. Nabud, and the other one is Na'bud.
Sidda. Stop. Okay.
Hamza.
Yeah, the Hamza stop.
Yeah, Na'bud. Yeah. So instead of Alim, it becomes Alim. Yeah. So the first one is more common and nobody corrects it. The fourth one is people actually attend to it. But the first one, many people pass it. Say إياك نعبد نعبد, like many people read it like this, and the people just make it go away, unfortunately. But إياك نعبد, if you say نعبد, people will stop you. People commonly will stop you. They say no, that's wrong, right?
So if you said Na'budu means Hamza, yeah? Sounds like
means Hamza, not heavy alif, yes.
Yeah, okay. So in this case, it's just like, okay. Yeah, okay, thanks. Jazakallah.
MashaAllah. So we'll do the next one, which is harful ha. The first common mistake, which is another one that takes a lot of my personal time nowadays, is the one which is replacing the ha with a kha or ha. So many of my young students, they unfortunately struggle with the ha because it's not a native letter for most Muslims. So instead of alhamdu, they say alhamdu. Or they might say alhamdu. Very few of them they say alhamdu, but many people say alhamdu, different variants of al-ha. So some people say alhamdu, some people say alhamdu, very clear. Some people say alhamdu, somewhere in between the ha and it has to be alhamdu, ha, clear, right? No ambiguity to it. You can't mix a little bit of ha in there. The second common mistake is weakening its whisper, and especially when you have the ha with the sukoon, because you say ar-Rahman, ar-Rahman, ar-Rah. That's how the whisper has to be. Instead of they say ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, quickly, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, like this. The third mistake is not clarifying it, especially when it occurs besides ayn, as in the example of فَاصْفَحْ عَنْهُمْ. فَاصْفَحْ عَنْهُمْ. It becomes فَاصْفَحْ عَنْهُمْ. فاصفع عنهم, like this. It's also a common mistake on the Hamza and the Ain as well. So I notice many people can't say أعوذ, they say أعو, أعو, right? So these sister letters from the very close articulation points, like the Hamza and the Ain, the Ha and the Ha, the Kha and the Ghain, these letters, because they're coming very close to each other, they could easily get mixed up, and the difference between them becomes very unnoticeable. So the way you fix it is by practicing on it. So when I practice, for example, the Hamza and the Ain, I will say A, A, Now I am contrasting the Hamza with the Ain. Because if you say you keep going back and forth, then it becomes very clear for you. Same thing with the Ha and the Ha. Like this. Just keep contrasting them. Common mistakes with the Ghain. The first one is mixing its sound with a Qaf. So instead of saying غير المغضوب, it becomes غير المغضوب, مغضوب. There's a little bit of Qaf and Ghain in there, because they are also very close to each other from articulation point perspective. The second mistake is merging it with a Qaf. It becomes a merge. So instead of saying وَلَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا, تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا, you see the rasm has a sukoon on the ghain, which means that's ibhar for the ghain. There's no merging here. But some people say لا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا, لا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا. Depends. Some people do missing like incomplete idgham. Some people do complete idgham. تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا, that's complete idgham. Incomplete, تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا, تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا. So they go with the ghain and the leaf with the qa. Both of these are not correct. The only one which is correct is a clear idhar for the ghain. لا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا. The third mistake is replacing it with a kha. And that's especially in the word يغشى, يغشى. They say يغشى, يغشى, يغشى. There's a little bit of kha and in the ghain. Because the word yakhsha is a different word. Yakhsha means fears. Yakhsha means covers. Number 4, giving it a qalqala. As in the word al-maghdoob, al-maghdoob. They say al-maghdoob, al-maghdoob, magha. They do like this. The fifth one is exaggeration in making it heavy when it has a kasra. As in the word min ghil, min ghil. Instead of min ghil, they say min ghil, min ghil, ghi. They try to pressure. We said that the letter, elevated letter with a kasra, that's the lowest level of tafkhim. So that's why it has to be just natural. Min ghil, like this. Common mistakes with harful kha. The first one is not making it heavy, as in the word khalidin. It becomes mistakenly khalidin, khalidin. That's a very common mistake. Many people say khalidin. It has to be khalidin. Kha, not kha, kha. The second common mistake is exaggerating in making it heavy, especially when it has a kasra on it. Very similar to the ghain. So instead of saying khifah, which is the right pronunciation, they say khuyfah, khuyfah, like this. That's too much pressure. Because we said that kasra is the lowest level of tafkhim. Common mistakes with harful qaf. The first common mistake with harful qaf is pronouncing it similar to al-kaf. So the example is, if you say qalu, becomes قالوا قالوا, right? قالوا, like this. That's wrong pronunciation. Has to be قالوا. The second mistake is exaggeration and weakening its heaviness when it has a kasra until it's changed to a kaf. Now it's the lowest level of tafkhim for the qaf is when it has a kasra. So it has to be lowest level of tafkhim, but it still has to be مفخمة. Right? فلا يقال إنها رقيقة كضدها تلك هي الحقيقة. It has to be مفخمة. So instead of saying وبالحق أنزلناه وبالحق نزل وبالحق أنزلناه وبالحق نزل, has to be وبالحق أنزلناه وبالحق نزل. So those of you who understand Arabic, they know that al-haq and al-haq are two different things. Al-haq means robbing. Al-haq means truth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that He revealed the Quran in truth, not in robbing. Robbing like skin, like this. This is al-haq, you know. So huge difference in the meaning. Number 3, changing it into a G. And that's common in some of the Arab tribes, mainly in Yemen. So instead of saying qalil, they say galil, galil. Another one is coming very close to a ghain, mixing it with a ghain. And that's common in also some Arab people, maybe mainly the Sudanese. Instead of saying al-qadr, they say al-ghadr. Al-ghadr means betrayal. Al-qadr means the Laylatul Qadr, the night of the creed. What's the English word? Al-qadr means the quantity, like the ascribing the word is gone. القدر إن كل شيء خلقناه بقدر. Just give me a second, I'll look at the translation quickly. Anyways, we'll come to it later. The night of destiny. Yeah, destiny. That's the word. Or night of power. Not really. No, not the right translation. Decree. Decree is the word. The fifth common mistake is whispering it. As in the word قالوا, it becomes قالوا, خالوا, like this. It's not as strong as it should be. Not قالوا, right? Common mistakes when it comes to harful kaf. The first one is exaggerating in the whispering of the letter, especially it has a haraka on it. So we said that these two letters, the kaf and the ta, have whisper characteristic. And that whisper is predominantly clear when you have a sukoon on them. So the word is kuwirat, at, right? The ta here as a whisper. But the kaf in the same word has a natural whisper to it. But some people try to exaggerate that. They say kuwirat, kuwirat, fakanu, fakanu. So they try to add the whisper to the kaf and they make it over. Has to be fakanu, kuwirat, natural, no problems. The second common mistake is neglecting its whispering characteristic, especially when it's sakin in the end. They call this al-kafu samma, al-kafu samma, because instead of saying dhikrak, dhikrak, they say dhikrak, like this, no hams, no whisper. Yaktubun, sadrak, sadrak, wizrak. Third common mistake is pronouncing it similar to qaf. As in, وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا. You see the kaf, the second kaf is coming very close to the qaf. So instead of وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا, they say وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا. وتركوك قائما. The second kaf becomes qaf. قائمة becomes like this. Same thing with the next example is وإذا السماء كشطت becomes وإذا السماء كشطت, because it's the word كشطت in Arabic has a meaning, very close meaning as well to كشطت, so people confuse the two words together. Let's go to next letter, حرف الجيم. Which time do I have to? Yeah, we have like 10 minutes. The first one is pronouncing it softly. Pronouncing it softly, as in, instead of saying جعلوا, it becomes جعلوا. Same thing with وجنة, it becomes وجنة. It's very, very common mistake in many Arab countries, in Levant, in Egypt, in lots of places. Especially like if you go to TV stations nowadays, the TV narrators, Arabic narrators, news channels, all of them, Jazeera, everything, they all say the jim, the j, they add this softness, looseness to the letter. Has to be edge, shadid. It's a shadid letter. جعلوا, you can't say جعلوا. This additional sound is not welcome. Yeah. The second common mistake is mixing its sound with that of dal, because they're trying to run away from the looseness that they make. Instead, they pressure too hard, they change it to a dal. So instead of يجمعون, it becomes يدمعون. يدمعون means they cry. يجمعون means they collect. So they change the meaning because they're trying to run away from the يجمعون. They say يجمعون. So they change it to dal. It's also a common mistake in many countries, including Egypt. Sorry for those of you who are Egyptians, I'm not attacking you in person. The third mistake is mixing its sound with that of sheen. Sheen, as in the word al-mujahideen. It becomes al-mujahideen, al-mushahideen, mushahideen. Right? Mushahideen means the people who watch. Mujahideen means the people who fight for the sake of Allah. So these are two different words. The fourth common mistake is changing it into a ya. And that's also a common mistake in many of the Gulf countries like Kuwait and other places. They don't say al-masjid, they say al-masjid. Al-masjid, like this. And although it's an authentic Arabic accent, similar to many of the other ones, it's not an accent that's reading the Quran with is allowed. It's not narrated from the Prophet ﷺ that he read the jim with the ya. And number 5 is pronouncing it like the letter G. G, as in the word al-hajj. It becomes al-hajj. Al-hajj, right? That's also not allowed. Common mistakes with the sheen. The first one is weakening its sound due to the weakness of the pressing on the articulation point. As in ishtaraw. It has to be ishtaraw. They say ishtaraw, very light. So that's very similar to, I think last week someone was talking about the whistling sound and arguing that the sheen has a little bit of whistling. It's because of that. It's because if you don't pressure too much on the articulation point, it becomes with some of that whistling. Was it whistling or? Yeah, I think whistling. So ishtaraw. The second mistake is keeping its sound confined within the mouth due to not parting a little between the jaws. So the sound cannot get out. So instead of saying ishtaraw, it becomes ijtaraw. Ijtaraw becomes very close to a jim. The third mistake is bringing its articulation point a little forward from the middle of the tongue so that the sound blurred with the sound of that of seen emitted. As in the word minash shaytan, it becomes minash shaytan becomes with some whistle as well. So that's the one example. which we took. That's specifically the example. And number 4 is making it heavy when it occurs beside a heavy letter, as in the word shatata. Shatata, they pronounce it shatata. Shatata. That's wrong. Another one is mistakes that occurs when pronouncing the non-lengthening ya now. So exaggerating and pressing on the middle of the tongue when pronouncing, especially when it has a shadda. So if you say إياك إياك, they say إياك إياك إياك. That's wrong, right? Too much pressure. Normal. إياك إياك. You have to make the number on it. You have to make the shadda clear. So I'm not saying you don't do anything here, but don't overdo it. The second common mistake is mixing its sound with a hint of the غنة. With a hint of the غنة, similar to the other ya madiyya. الدنيا الدنيا يا الدنيا, like this. That's nasal part, which is not welcome. Now, common mistakes with the dad, which we just talked about, the istitala of it. The first one is changing it with a dha. Changing it with a dha. That changes the meaning. So the example here, ضل ضل means got misguided. ظل means stayed. So ظل في مكانه, he stayed in his place. ظل, that's the dha. But if you say ضل, means he got misguided, he lost his way. So that's why the Imam al-Jazari in his Muqaddimah Jazariyah, he had a whole section just to distinguish the dad from the dha. And he told you all of the words in the Quran which is written with a dha compared to the other ones which are written with a dha. So it's because it's very confusing for people who memorize the Quran. Sometimes it gets really confusing which one is used here. Yeah. The next one is changing it to a heavy dal or a dal. As in the word تفيضون, it becomes تفيضون. تفيضون. So they change the dad into a dal, which changes the meaning as well. تفيضون means that you benefit. تفيضون means you get it's overflowed. You get extra. Number 3, pronouncing a vocal emptiness, claiming it's a sound of elongation or prolongation, the istitala. So instead of saying وَلَضَّا, instead of that they say وَلَضَّالِّينَ. So they cut the sound a little bit and they say I'm making istitala. You don't hear it, but I'm doing it, you know. So that's cheating. That's not allowed. The fourth one is giving it qalqala in the place, and it's not a letter of qalqala, as in the word waqadba. They say waqadba, waqadba. Has to be waqadba, waqadba, like this. The fifth example or common mistake is emitting a ghunna with it. So instead of saying wafadl, wafadl, like this, they say wafadl. وَفَضْل, like this. They add nasal part to it. The sixth one, merging it with the following letter, as in the words اضطر, اضطر, they say اضطر. The other one is عرضتم, they say عرضتم, عرضتم. There's also another couple of ones which is changing it to a lam, heavy lam, as if they say وَلَلَّالِّينَ, وَلَلَّالِّينَ. That's not allowed. And some people say وَلَلَّالِّينَ, وَلَلَّالِّينَ. That's also not allowed. How many pages do we have left? Maybe we cannot finish it, unfortunately, because we started a little bit late. If you don't mind, maybe we'll just give it like 2 more minutes. I'll finish these 2 pages, inshallah, and we'll go at least to have something to finish with next week. The first one is now talking about the lam, mistakes happening with the lam. The first one is making it heavy when it should be light, as in the word al-latif. They say al-latif. That's wrong. The second one is making it light when it should be heavy, as in the word minallah, they say minallah. That's wrong. The third one is merging it with the following letter, as in أنزلناه, they say أنزلناه. Or ولا تحملنا, they say ولا تحملنا. Number 4, merging the pronounced definite article الدلام القمرية in الجبال, they say الجبال. الجبال. That's wrong. Number 5, mixing its sound with a hint of the غنة, they say بنا بنا, like this. They add غنة to the lam. Common mistakes with the noon. The first one is not giving it enough غنة when you stop on it. نستعين نستعين. You see the noon? They say نستعين نستعين, like this. They don't give it enough time. And we said the noon is in between letters, so it has some timing in it when it has sukun. The second one is exaggerating and giving it due غنة when stopping on it. For the same example, some people say نستعين, like this. That's wrong. That's too much. Third mistake is giving it qalqala when it has sukun. So instead of saying أنعمت, they say أنعمت أنعمت. That's wrong. The fourth case is making it heavy when it has some heaviness after it. So instead of saying النار, they say النار النار. The noon and the alif and the ra, all of them becomes heavy. The fifth case is shaking the ghunna when you have the stress, when you have enough time for it. Some people call this al-tatween, and that is not allowed. When you say min al-jinnati wan-nas, that's too much, right? Some people do a little bit, like they say min al-jinnati wan-nas. That's yani on the line, okay, you know. But the timing, because you don't have that much time to play around. But some people push it too far. I think we'll stop here, inshallah.